Hello everyone, my name is Brian. I am a developer from Florida, and today we're going to go over Learn Rails, the Broadway project. Our key concepts for today are controller, routes, and Rail servers. Now, controller and routes are just things that are utilized in Rails application to navigate and control the actions of your website. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Here I am in the Broadway project. And in the overview here, we can see that we're going to build a Rails application for their homepage. And if you click here, it will show you what it's going to look like. So this is what we will replicate. And we need three parts to build this Rails application: a route, a controller, and a view. And it says right here that in order to preview our application at any point, we can start the server and go to localhost 4001. Let's go ahead and move to step number one. Step number one is to create a new Rails app called Broadway. So Rails new Broadway. Now that is completed, we will move on to step number two, which is to change directory into the application that we just created. We can confirm that we are there by running pwd, which stands for print working directory. And now on step number three, we're going to install the gems from the gems file. So we're going to run bundle install. Now that is completed, we're going to generate a controller named pages. So we're going to run Rails generate controller pages. Now here I am using a shorthand for generate, which is the -G. You can write generate. And I actually got an error because I use a dash. Actually, it does not use a dash. It's actually just a G. So now my controller is created. And now for step number 5, we are going to go to the pages controller, the one that we just created. We should be in the applications folder, controllers, pages controller. And we're going to make a home action for the home page. So let's go ahead and create our action. So we're going to define home and now we're going to move on to step number 6. So in the routes file, which is in the config folder, and the file is routes.rb, we are going to map the request for the URL pages home to pages controllers home action. So we are going to go ahead and do the following. So if we get pages home, we are going to fire the pages controller, and the action will be home. Now let's move on to step number 7, So in the root directory of the project, we've provided the base HTML, home.html.rb, and CSS, pages.css for this project. And we are supposed to look at the bottom of the file navigation to locate them. So as you can see, they're right here outside the Broadway project. And in our Rails project, we're going to create this file, home.html.erb, then copy and paste the content from home.html.brb, and do the same thing for the CSS. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So let's open up here the HTML one. I'm going to select everything and copy it. And then in my Broadway project, I will go to the directory that we have in the instructions. So I'm going to go into the views and pages, and we're going to click the three dots over here, which will simulate a right click, and we're going to create a new file, and the name of that file is home.html.erb. Now I'm going to open that file, I'm going to paste, and I'm going to save. And now I will do the same with the CSS. I'm going to select everything, copy it, I close it, and then I'm going to come to the new directory. So it'll be application, assets, style sheets, and in the pages.css file, I'm going to select everything, and I'm just going to erase it and just paste the new thing and save. Now moving on to step number 8, we are going to start our server to preview how our website is doing so far. So Rails server port 4001. So now that the server is running, I'm going to click on that link, and we can see here that our website is live. Now I'm going to mark that as completed and move on to step number 9. And here we have multiple steps to complete. So we're going to finish the view to display the header and the main section. So in the app view headers page.home.html.erb file, which is the one that we created recently, the one where we copied and pasted everything from, we are going to add 4 list items for about, work, team, and contact inside the header. So I'm going to have to make this a little bit smaller in order for me to see. And I'm going to close this here. Okay. So inside my header, add 4 list items for about, work, team, and contact. So let's create a UL. So this is how to make a list in HTML. UL stands for unordered list, so it won't have any numbers. And then LI just stands for list item, and those are going to be about, work, theme, and contact. Now we have the items here, as you can tell. So now in the CSS, we're going to write some code to display them in the same line. So I am going to open the CSS file. And here I will write code to display them in the same line. And here you can see that our li is actually inside a nav class. So I'm going to go ahead and give the UL a class of nav. Remember that this could be, when you're building your own site, this will be however you guys organize it, but since the code was already provided, I'm going to follow the same name convention. As you can see here, the style actually changed. Now it has white color, the letters, and it doesn't have the dots in front of them as it did before. So now I have to write some code to make them inline. For that, I am going to use display inline, and I'm going to see if that works. Yes, it worked. Now remember that this is HTML and CSS, and it is not related to the Rails lesson. So if you haven't done HTML and CSS beforehand, don't worry about it. It's a completely separate thing. This lesson is just assuming that you know the very basics of HTML and CSS. So now for step number 3, within step 9, we're going to change the background image of the Jumbotron section. And it's telling us that we can use our own image, but here's the image that they use. And it says to use it on the Jumbotron section, which is right here. So we're going to use background image. And save. It seems that I've made a mistake with the CSS. I believe that should fix it now. Yep, I definitely broke the CSS beforehand. I forgot to use the colon. And then the link between parentheses, it's the argument for URL. Sorry about that, guys. And now we're going to move on to step number 4, which is to add a link that says get started and write some CSS to style it into a dark gray button. Let's go ahead and move to the HTML file and find the main section, which is right here. And we are going to create a link. So we're going to use the anchor tag. And within that tag, it's going to say get started. And the link, for the time being, we don't have. So we're going to save that. We see here that it says get started, and now we're going to have to write some CSS to style it into a dark gray button. Before moving to the CSS, I will give this a class, and it will be button primary. Now I'm going to save the HTML, move on to the CSS. And I'm going to select the button primary. And I had already developed the code here. As you can see, it's actually very similar to the button default. It's very similar. I just gave it a different color for the text, but it is the same color for the background. This is just the font size and adding some padding, taking out the decorations, and etc. You can design this however you guys want. This is just the way that I had previously done it before. So now step 9 is completed, and we're going to move on to step number 10. And in the routes file, we're going to set the home action as the app home page. And to do this, we need to replace the route that we created before. So we're going to close this. We're going to go to the routes file. And we are going to replace what we created before. So instead of forwarding to the home action in the page controller, when we get pages home in the URL, which is here, as you can tell in the URL from the menu browser, we are just going to say, make that the root. So now we're going to save, and we're probably going to get an error because I deleted that route, but that's okay. So now I'm going to delete that. And now if I go to localhost, my default or my root will forward me to the pages controller home action. And now it's asking me to restart the Rails server and view the results by visiting localhost 4001. But it was not necessary, as it worked even without killing the server. But we're going to go ahead and do that just to finish the step. So now that is there, and now I'm going to refresh the page. And as you can see here, we have our website still here. So that was all for the Broadway project on Ruby on Rails. Don't be confused by all the HTML and CSS that was done here. The main part of the project was for you to understand the controller actions and the routes. So with the controller, we created an action called home, and we used the routes file to make sure that when we get a specific link, we forward to that controller and that action. Once again, my name was Brian from Code Academy. Happy coding.